The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, episode 46.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hey everyone, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter, aka Father Fett, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. Today we are discussing Star Wars Rebels by looking at Season 2, Episodes 3 and 4, The Lost Commanders and Relics of the Old Republic. Joining me today on the panel are, first up, Andrew Hermes.
Hi, Father. How's it going?
Going pretty well. Second up this evening, we have Thomas Sanjurjo. Hey, Thomas.
Hey, Father. How's it going?
Going pretty well. And finally, this evening, Angela Cialana is joining us as well.
You got to ask too.
I'm not going to ask the same question. What I was going to say is that Josh did a great job last time. So
yes,
kudos,
he was.
Thank you. And,
it was really cool to get his perspective on things.
Yes.
So we might run into a few other surprise guest appearances when we're not able to all come together. So, Josh, we loved having you on. So before we really jump into the Rebels episodes, there are just a number of news tidbits that I wanted to kind of throw out and bounce around. First one being, I don't know about you guys, but I'm super excited for Star Wars Jedi Temple Challenge on Star Wars Kids.
Ahmed Best.
So by the time that this podcast drops, the first episode should have already dropped because it's going to be debuting on June 3rd on StarWarsKids.com and also on the Star Wars Kids YouTube channel. So I remember growing up with the Legends of the Hidden Temple, I think is what it was called.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm super excited about that.
I've been consistently impressed with the content that they're putting out on Star Wars Kids. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Like the cartoon shorts are great. All of the little sideways tidbits, the outside of the expanding the universe kind of stuff. It's really good.
Is that where those the animated shorts, the Forces of Destiny is on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I still need to jump into those.
Oh, they're
those
fantastic. And they're really great bite size, just kind of throw stuff out there, and they don't water anything down too. That's the thing I've been really impressed with. Is like it's the story, and it really like digs into the deeper meanings of the story, and in a very good way.
Cool. I've got a nephew who's just over 2 years old, so I could wrangle him into watching it with me.
There you
go. Some not so good news. The Star Wars The High Republic, which was supposed to launch in August, has now been delayed to January 2021. So that's a bit of a bummer. But as sort of a consolation prize, Star Wars Thrawn, the first of the Ascendancy trilogy, Chaos Rising, is going to debut earlier than it's kind of had its date shifted all over the place. But at this point, it's September 1st. So that one I'm super excited about. Have you guys read any of the Thrawn books?
I haven't.
Yeah.
The old Timothy Zahn stuff, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I've read.
I loved meeting Thrawn in Rebels myself. And I was going to say, I kind of laughed when I read the title for the Chaos Rising, because it's just like, how many more verbs and adjectives can we come up with that are Star Wars, like the pairing of the two words, Yeah. Chaos Rising, Rise of Skywalker, Revenge of the, I don't know, it's just it makes me laugh. I
just had to laugh too, because as I wrote it down, I used 1, 2, 3, I think, colons, because there's Star Wars, Thrawn, the Ascendancy trilogy, Chaos Rising. Like, right. It's like title, subtitle. So, but that one should be a really fun one. Speaking of Thrawn, there is a rumor, so this is total rumor territory, but there is a rumor that they are looking for a live action Thrawn. Ezra's been kind of joined into that rumor mill as well. And all that they kind of have said is to a Disney Plus series. So that could be a whole new one. That could be Mandalorian. It could be none of the above. And it's just pure, fans going crazy. But I think that would be a really cool thing to do a live action Thrawn.
Definitely.
I think it's only a matter of time that we see him in live action. And he could very well be obviously filling Darth Vader's shoes is almost impossible, but the next big bad, in the Star Wars universe, we still haven't seen it in live action yet. So he might be the one. I think it would be a good candidate.
And we're still sort of in limbo on the Rebels sequel. Ezra and Thrawn are kind of off in the unknown regions, and we still haven't wrapped up their stories. So I think there's some really cool things coming down the pike. So jumping into these particular episodes, remember that we're kind of following Rex and Ahsoka and Maul and Rebels. So these next two episodes that we're looking at very much follow Rex as he makes his Star Wars Rebels debut. So as I always do, I'll throw it to you guys first. What was your initial impressions of both of these episodes?
I like the view of the clones as old men. It was, had the just crotchety old guys with their old tech that they've kind of kept running for way longer than it should have.
Going fishing.
Yeah.
I can't remember what my first impressions of these episodes were because it was so long ago, but my first impression, I guess, was that I really, after watching the end of Clone Wars and then watching this, I cried. Was it 2 or 3 times? I don't remember. I wrote it in my notes how many times I cried watching these episodes, because we see the return of Ahsoka and Rex's relationship, and we also see Rex and how he ended up, and of course we knew how he ended up, but now we really know how he ended up. I really I enjoyed seeing the problem solving. I enjoyed seeing the interplay now between these clones and the family that is, our Rebels family, the Ghost. And I also just love annoyed Hera. She's already one of the greatest characters, but then when she's annoyed, she's just even more lovable. And I don't know why, but great job, Vanessa, on that voice acting.
So they really have the mom and dad feel down between her and Kanan. It's like it's very much a family. Like this group of people is really a family that's come together out of the need and the stress of the situation that they're in. But they all fill those roles very well.
Yeah, like Angela said, watching this with a new lens after completing Clone Wars, it's seeing the gang get back together, at least Ahsoka and Rex. It was really neat to see, and to see them at different points in their lives, and revisiting a show that I watched a long time ago. Just seeing it from that perspective was it brought it to a new light. And the thing I love most is just seeing how persuasive Rex can be. Rex can really convince a Jedi to do anything, and at the same time call him captain. And it's really fun. And obviously, at the end of episode 4, having that moment was really cool, and it meant a lot more this time.
Yeah, it had a lot more emotional impact for me as well, because when I first saw these episodes when they debuted, I hadn't really gotten into the Clone Wars a whole lot. So I knew who Rex was, but I didn't really have a connection to him. And then, especially after going through the finale of the Clone Wars and seeing that, seeing Rex come back was really cool. And I put in my notes also that I love the fact that we get to look at what retirement looks like in Star Wars. This is the clones equivalent of getting an RV and just going fishing. Right. So I really thought that was fun. I also thought it was really interesting. They really kind of play this, of course, Kanan being distrusting of the clones, and so he kind of takes a back seat. But it's interesting how influential Ezra is, and how Ezra kind of takes charge and takes the lead. And I think a couple times I even put that Ezra ends up being the voice of reason against Kanan's kind of emotions, which is just kind of different than what normally happens. So, yeah,
I have a lot to
these are
say
fun.
on that.
Okay.
Later.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Make sure that you jump that in when it's time for it. So to kind of kick off the recap, this happens immediately after the siege of Lothal, and the basic summary is that Ahsoka Tano sends the Ghost crew to Selos in search of an old friend, one whose leadership and strategy skills could help the fledgling rebellion. But will this legendary commander be willing to join the fight? So we sort of kind of see how that kicks off. That we start with the fact that the rebels have lost their command ship, which happened in the end of the Siege of Lothal Part 2. And they're kind of forced to regroup. And I love how Ezra is the one who suggests that they go and find a place to hide. And Commander Sato is going to look at it as establishing a base rather than going off to go hide somewhere and regroup. But they don't have a place in mind. They don't know of a place. Hera laments that they don't know of a potential base that would work to protect their fleet, and they're kind of at a loss. And that's when Ahsoka jumps in, suggesting that she knows someone who could potentially help, who is a great military commander with a vast knowledge of the Outer Rim. But Ahsoka lost track of him quite some time ago, and all of her transmissions to him have gone unanswered. So that's kind of the setup to the whole episode. Of course, we all know that it's Rex that she's talking about, but they don't. One of the things that I put in my notes at this point was that we see Sabine with a new hairstyle. So this is kind of her season 2 look, which is kind of fun. I prefer her season 1 look over her blue hair, but that's Sabine. Ahsoka knows that she can. She kind of has an idea of where to find Rex, because she knows that he was in the Selos system, or that's where he was last known. And she brings this head of an old tactical droid from the Clone Wars who is going to be able to track things. And she suggests that the crew of the Ghost use this to find this commander. And she unfortunately can't come with them because there are still questions about the Sith Lord that need answering. I'm still not sure if she fully... I know we kind of talked about this last week, Thomas, but I'm still not quite sure if she knows fully if the Sith Lord is Anakin or not.
I think she doesn't want to admit it, but I think she knows it. I think that's kind of where she is still in that state of denial about it.
Valid point. Before leaving, though, Ahsoka does tell Kanan that he must trust her friend, and she stresses that. Trust him. Trust him.
And Ezra's like, what did that mean? It's like, well, Ezra, you're about to find some stuff out.
Yeah. But she obviously knows that he is going to have issues with Rex as a clone, but she doesn't prep him beforehand.
I wonder, like this for me felt a lot like she wasn't going, not because she couldn't or really even had anything else to do, but just because she wanted to give Kanan some wings on this mission, you know. And I think that kind of fits her character as she's matured, that she realizes that people need space to be able to make their own decisions. And that was something that was important to her in the Clone Wars. And it's something that I think she's trying to pass off to Kanan and Ezra both. It's almost like she's being the mentor Jedi, but from the sidelines in a really creative way. And I loved watching that about her in this episode.
That sort of echoes what she did in the Siege of Lothal with Ezra. Like she agreed and helped and confirmed Ezra's choice, but she let Ezra come to that decision on his own. I think from a kind of a not an in-universe explanation, but I know kind of a Rebels in general. I know that they weren't trying to make Ahsoka the core of the stories,
right?
So from a storytelling point, they wanted to keep it primarily focused on the Ghost. So So that could also be why Ahsoka needed to go find answers, but that's not in universe explanation.
I like that it fits both ways. You know, that's kind of one of that's good writing.
Yeah.
When you can make it fit both ways, that's when you know you've got good writing.
Well, and it helps the whole show because Ahsoka not being there for the main part of the story for these 2 episodes doesn't diminish the story that's told or your, you know, enjoyment of the episode or your emotional connection to the characters. So the ghost then does arrive at Selos, and this is where we get I put this in my notes too, Angela, that I loved the interaction between Hera and Chopper in this because Hera scolds Chopper for not defining the hyperdrive as an important repair.
Yeah, and Chopper really acts like, I think a cat. People kind of say he's like a dog, but I think he's more like a cat because he's got a lot of sass. You know, and he talks back a lot, like probably more than R2.
I would totally put him more as a cat than a dog.
Yeah.
R2D2 and BB-8 would be the adorable puppy, and Chopper is so sarcastic.
Yeah. Well, my kids were talking about it too, like right before they leave when Ahsoka brings out the helmet, he says something, and one of my kids like he just said, I've got a bad feeling about this. And I'm like, I mean, it totally fits. You know? Like, it was a great line of dialogue to throw in right there for Chopper, even though you can't understand a word he's saying. He totally translated it.
And he's got like the mechanical arm movements that you can almost. It's not equivalent to a lip read, but it's pretty darn close. Needless to say, the hyperdrive needs fixing, and Hera, disgruntled with Chopper, decides that she and Chopper have to stay back on the Ghost and fix what was broken. So the rest of the crew take the Phantom down to the planet in search of this commander, and they get down to the planet and they activate the tactical droid, and he begins to repeat the number 7567. After seeing the Clone Wars, I was totally able to connect that. I know that the first time I watched it, I had not a clue what those numbers meant. But that's definitely it's his birth number, but it's his call number too. It's CT7567 is Rex's his number, and this tactical droid locks onto that signal and directs them to an old ATTE, an all-terrain tactical enforcer, an old military ground walker used by the Republic in the Clone Wars. But this thing is like, you know, totally decked out in homey things, and there's a wind chimes and
surfer dude residence.
Right.
Seriously.
Totally gets Sabine's attention. She calls it kind of a work of art. So they land, and we are then introduced to Rex, Wolffe, and Gregor, who come out on the deck. And I loved all the especially the interaction between Zeb and the clones. He immediately calls them a bunch of old geezers. And that sort of gets played off throughout the episode too. Yeah. He does kind of pay for that. And we get sort of this kind of standoff between the two of them, because Kanan tells them that they're looking for someone, and Rex is obviously just trying to lay low and not get involved. And that's when Ezra asks if 7567 means anything to Rex, and he responds visibly to that and says that it's his birth number. And that's when Kanan recognizes them as clones and immediately prepares himself to fight and pulls out his lightsaber, and expecting them to try to kill him. So Wolffe reacts and starts shooting at him, and thankfully we have Rex as the voice of reason on the ATTE, and Ezra reminding Kanan that Ahsoka said to trust them. And so they kind of are able to smooth over the brief misunderstanding there.
So I thought the scene was really interesting, because you're looking at Rex, who we know how he avoided the Order 66 and how he came to do all the stuff that he did. But then, do we have any backstory on Wolffe and Gregor, or is this just their endpoint?
I I don't think so. I think I remember after the finale that people were asking if we were going to get an explanation for them because, of course, people had seen this episode. So they were wondering if we were going to. So I don't think, no, canonically there hasn't been anything official.
Okay, because there's a huge amount of subtext that goes through this whole scene with them and the first introduction to them in both these episodes that I have like this really big backstory like logged now from watching this, especially with the end of Clone Wars being the way it was, that involves Rex going back to the Empire, because it sounds like, as you listen to all the dialogue that they go through here, it sounds like Rex worked for the Empire for quite a while until they retired the clones. So like he went back, and what I'm thinking is he went back as a double agent, right? Go back and like try and convince some of the clones to, break away with him. And then he's got a couple of really close ones here that have retired with him, but that both cut the chip out of their head so that they could think on their own and work on their own. And, that's, I don't know. I was wondering if there was anything official about it, but I'm comfortable now saying that I like that theory. I'm going to run with it.
There you go.
This could be one of those situations where it's better to just kind of let it be a bit of a mystery.
Right.
I know that both Gregor and Wolffe were in the Clone Wars, so they've already been established within the Clone Wars series as characters, so they aren't just kind of random clones that we haven't met before. Right. But yeah, we don't really know anything beyond what was in that series. It was also interesting at that point, Rex, once they get through their introductions, Rex mentions that he fought with Ahsoka from the Battle of Christophsis to the Siege of Mandalore. And so that was kind of fun because we finally know what the Siege of Mandalore looks like, rather than just kind of, it's the Siege of Mandalore and it was canceled and we never got to see it. And, so no need to imagine, just go watch the finale arc of the Clone Wars. So once all the introductions are over, they migrate inside of the ATTE, and it's again Ezra who is kind of taking the lead and talking to Rex and asking for his help, and Rex is unsure if they'd be able to help, and that's where Rex points out that the Emperor has said that the clones have served their purpose and he's retired them. So that's why they're out on this ATTE, kind of living the retired life. Because now they just sit around and tell stories and sling for jupas. Okay. So
I love the context we
sounded
get
very
here.
like Australian outback type of language,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the context we get here shows us more of what they had to have been doing without someone else from the outside coming in.
Even the planet kind of has a Australian desert sort of feel to it.
Yeah, it goes well with the accent of the clones. The Oceania accent. So.
Yeah. So they so Kanan, and we kind of see this often on throughout these, is Kanan's ready to just kind of give up and leave, but it's Ezra who continues to try to convince Rex, and asks Rex if he can give them a list of the secret locations in the Outer Rim for potential base. At which point Rex is agreeable that they can kind of put together that list. And we get a bit of foreshadowing, though, at this point, because Wolffe is concerned that in helping them, the Empire will hunt them down and there'll be consequences for it. So that kind of comes into play a little bit later. Meanwhile, Gregor, I think he was... I was watching one of the behind the scenes, and they called Gregor kind of the crazy uncle. And so he gets this idea that if they're going to help the rebels, then the rebels can help them. And again, Kanan is like, no. And Ezra's like, oh, yeah, how can we help? And immediately wants to get in there and help. And really, he wants Zeb to help about catching, what was his name? Big Bongo? Is that
Big Bongo, yeah.
Big Bongo, yeah. The mythical giant Jupa out in the desert. So we kind of switch then to Agent Callus, somewhere in deep space on his Star Destroyer, receiving a transmission from the clones about the Jedi, and they're not sure if it's a legitimate thing, but they decide to send a probe to investigate anyways, as they're trying to hunt down the rebels. And back on the ATTE, we have a cool moment between Ezra and Kanan. Because they're talking, and Kanan finally kind of opens up about why he doesn't trust the clones, and he tells Ezra about the clones who fought side by side with them and then was betrayed by them, and how he saw his master being gunned down by the clones because of Order 66. And for those of you who want to read how that happens, it's actually in the comics. Kanan, the Last Padawan is the comic series where that is kind of portrayed.
You know, when I first saw this episode, I didn't have a real appreciation for how deeply that affected Kanan, and how, seeing that finale of the Clone Wars, we got to see, we talked about it, how the relationship between the clones and the Jedi, and just how traumatic that was to see them turn on them. And I think, Josh kind of said last time that this season really shows a lot of growth in Kanan. And, he has to overcome some really traumatic fear. I think it's interesting, this particular episode, but this arc in general shows sort of like PTSD in Star Wars, because we're seeing that in Kanan, but we're also seeing it in Wolffe, who initially, he's getting a sense of the enemy, like, oh, I'm in a conflict situation, this is the enemy. And that happens, when you have that type of trauma. And same thing with Kanan, he automatically sees a clone, and that deep-seated fear and just, again, trauma, it comes back up. And just, the way that they deal with this, they don't say anything like that. They don't use any of that terminology, but there's still this episode, and this arc is still illustrating that concept to kids, ultimately, right? And I thought that was just so interesting now, coming again off of that finale, that everything is so much richer for those who are going to watch the Clone Wars and then watch Rebels, because then they will understand and they will be like, oh yeah, wow, like I understand why Kanan is feeling this way and why Wolffe is feeling this way. And it just makes it so much richer.
Yeah, even I like the line that Wolffe says when he first sees it's the Jedi, he's here for revenge. And he starts shooting him. And it's like, it's just the immediate jump to, Kanan draws his lightsaber out to defend himself because he's nervous about them attacking. And then Wolfe's like, no, he's attacking us. So it really does. It shows that tension and that nervousness that you live with after you've witnessed and been part of such horrible things.
But it's also really cool because it shows how they're affected by their past trauma, but it also shows them dealing with it and then moving in a positive direction, because Wolffe does contact the Empire because he's letting his concern for the safety of his squad take paramount priority in his life, and that's kind of his defense mechanism against the Jedi. But by the end of the 2 episodes, he's able to kind of talk to Rex, and Rex, I think there's a point in there where he apologizes, or he says, something like, that was wrong. And he admits, that he did make that mistake, and he's able to kind of grow from that. And Kanan too is able to make those steps to trust Rex, even if he, by the end of the 2 episodes, he's not, completely on board yet, but he's, acknowledging his own fears, his trauma, and is able to kind of walk forward with it. So yeah, well done for an animated kids show.
Yeah, it shows how in Star Wars, it's a lot of the times if you're a bad character at one point, or in the clones' case, they acted against their will.
Mm-hmm.
But like, even if you've done bad things, usually in Star Wars it goes one way or the other. If you're evil, there's usually if you do get redeemed, you get redeemed like with your last dying breath, like Darth Vader did, or Kylo did. But it's interesting to see how once a character has redemption, how they, even after that redemption, continue to struggle with how to adapt to life after Order 66, an event like that. It's not that things continue to be not everything has a happy ending. So you continue to have to struggle with what you went through. It's cool to see like how that affects these, on a large degree, lesser known characters in the Star Wars universe. When it comes to the mainstream, it's good to see it from that perspective in these, on these animated shows.
And that's just Mark. That's good storytelling too. Is that like it's the humanity of these characters, and the best stories reflect authentic life, and sort of provide commentary on it, but also being that escapism, or that we're in a galaxy far, far away, but we can also completely relate to these characters, and it's not just so unrelatable. So it's good storytelling for sure. At this point in the episode, we get the wonderfully crazy slinging for Jupas kind of sequence. It was just fun. Zeb is out front. He's attached to this energy line, and anybody really thinking about it, he definitely looks like the worm on the end of a fishing pole.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like, how did they not realize what was going on until much later? And then, I just watching it, I got the sense that the Ghost crew was just kind of like, are we really doing this?
But it's also totally relatable too. I can remember, just like hanging out with my aunts and uncles, and at one point we were going fishing along this lake or this river out in Wisconsin, and like I really didn't want to be there, but it's just like, okay, we're doing this. Ezra, on the other hand, was like totally getting excited and into it. Yeah, they very much recognize quickly that Zeb is the bait. And this big bongo, as they're calling him, does indeed snatch Zeb up in its mouth, and the game is on, as I kind of phrased it in my notes. And everybody kind of pitches in to be able to catch this Jupa. And we get some cool moments there, where Gregor mistakenly calls Kanan General, and Kanan, of course, balks at that and tells him not to call it, and so Gregor calls him Commander.
Oh, that's right. You're a Padawan. Okay, yeah.
And they do manage ultimately to pull the Jupe up to the surface, and Rex manages to take it out and kill it, and Zeb has this wonderful kind of transformation in him, because he comes out of the mouth and he's all disgusted and and he's really irritated by the whole thing until Gregor shows him how impressive the catch was, and then he's like, oh, wasn't so bad after all. Apparently they don't have sharp teeth that or Zeb just has really tough skin.
Just swallowed him whole.
Yes. Done. So they are invited to stay for dinner. Kanan kind of wants to get going, but Zeb wants to taste the thing that tasted him. Kanan calls Hera on kind of the holo transmitter, and they have a cool mom and dad sort of talk between the two of them, where Hera's acknowledging Kanan's own fears, and basically she points out to him that the clones saved billions of lives, including her own. And maybe knowing that would be a start for Kanan to be able to kind of let go of his past. So I think that may have been a little bit of the nudge that Kanan needed. Meanwhile, the probe droid that has been sent by the Empire does show up and has been taking pictures of them and enters the Phantom after Kanan leaves. So we know that the Empire is going to be coming pretty quick. Rex compiles the list of potential bases and the clearance codes and the protocols for the rebels. And Rex...
Can we just...
Yep.
Oh, I was going to say, can we just appreciate what he gave them? Because I wrote it down. It was every Republic base, separatist installation, pirate hideout, and smuggler's den in the Outer Rim, plus a few Mandalorian bases that supposedly even they've forgotten about. I thought that was really an interesting combination of things to give them.
He's been busy. That's where this whole this whole story about what has he been doing? If he was separated from Ahsoka, where has he been and what has he been working on? And I thought that was there's so much to tell there. That was really cool, and I can just see him rising in the ranks real quick, and then making sure that he gains a trusted commando group and starts striking out on his own to do some specialized missions, that are specific to whatever task he has, which is kind of setting up for the rebellion. That was his, how are we going to fight back? And then he got old and was like, I'm done. This is for somebody else. And this was the moment. Okay, I can pass this stuff off to somebody else. Now you guys can take this and go and do what I had started working toward.
Because he obviously would have known the Empire and who they, and what they did and would have been inherently against that. So maybe they'll come out with a novel someday. Rex's story.
It did make me wonder though, what was, I don't know if he had any more Mandalorian where did he get these hidden Mandalorian bases from? Who does he know? Where are these people, these Mandalorians?
Maybe he's still in contact with Bo-Katan.
Yeah, but Bo-Katan would know where these are. I don't know. They said even they've forgotten about it. I don't know who they is referring to. But that's what I wrote down, is that Wolffe said, plus a few Mando bases that even they've forgotten about. Mm-hmm. Who are they?
The implication is the Mandalorians, but it could be a sect of Mandalorians. It could be, I don't know. Yeah, good question. It's probably not going to pay off anywhere, but still.
Yeah. maybe we'll get a novel that somehow ties into that. I love the details.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We get a cool moment between Rex and Ezra, where he's telling Ezra how impressed he is by how impressed Rex is of Ezra. And he says, a great Jedi once told me that the best leaders lead by example. You do that well. And every time Rex was saying something like that, I mean, he's talking about Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, but I kept linking it to Anakin, which kind of, I mean, it carried a bit of weight this time around. At this point in the whole episode, Sabine does find evidence of the clones having sent the Empire transmission, and she finds the unanswered messages from Ahsoka, which that was sort of interesting. Never read by Rex, but Wolffe had apparently been keeping them from Rex, and Wolffe had been the one to send out the transmission to the Empire, again, out of that sort of gut reaction of protecting his squad. Not that he was intentionally wanting to be malicious, but it was his, acting out of fear that caused him to do that. And Rex, and that's where Rex is able to kind of talk to him and say, he says, we can't live under the fear of the Empire for the rest of our lives. And that is not freedom. They do find the pro droid at that point and chase it down. And Ezra gives Rex the opportunity to make it right and hands him the blaster rifle, so Rex is able to shoot the droid and destroys it. And the episode ends with them recognizing that they're stranded because the Phantom is damaged and that the Empire is most likely on its way. Anything that you wanted to mention before we jump into the next one? Okay, perfect. Because they are very much, I mean, it's to be continued in part 2. Right. Yeah. So episode 4, of course, is part 2 of this arc, and this episode is called Relics of the Old Republic, and it picks up right where we left off. The group is scrambling to get the Phantom fixed, and of course, let's crank up the drama a little bit. There's a sandstorm approaching, and Rex does give the Ghost crew the list of coordinates to all the bases and the separatist installations and pirate hideouts, smugglers' dens, and the Mandalorian bases. And there was a cool moment there between Zeb and Gregor. That was, I kind of mentioned that earlier, because Zeb sort of says, you're not bad in a fight. And I mean, for older gentlemen, you're not bad in a fight. And they kind of have this camaraderie between the two of them, which was fun to see. Rex still doesn't want to come with them and get involved in another war. And so they're kind of scrambling at this point. Meanwhile, Hera is continuing to fix the ghosts. And of course, that's right when the Star Destroyer decides to show up above the planet, because they've seen the images from the probe droid. And so Hera powers down so she won't be discovered. And that includes powering down Chopper. And they send TIE fighters to the surface to go scout for the rebels. The Imperials contact the clones, and Wolffe tries to kind of smooth over the situation and does not do a successful job of that.
Does that ever work? Is there ever a situation when the Empire contacts you and you like can fool them in?
Blame it on your eye.
With Callus, maybe, but probably not. With Darth Vader, definitely not.
Yeah.
So Wolffe tries to say that it was just his cybernetic eye acting up, and Callus shows him an image of the rebels, which the probe droid had taken, and that's when Rex comes on and basically says if they want to fight, he'd better bring a better class than the stormtroopers. And those poor stormtroopers get a
whole Star Destroyer worth of stormtroopers versus three clones.
Three clones.
Bring all of them.
Yeah,
go.
He didn't make the situation any better.
But had they actually done that, they might have actually won the battle. But
they still underestimated them. Yeah, you're right.
That's not how it happens. Yeah. So the Empire does find them. There's the TIE fighters are finds the ATTE and fires on them, and Gregor at one point finally uses a rocket launcher to shoot down the TIE fighter. Pretty cool. Agent Callus decides not to do an orbital bombardment, but he wants to do a ground assault, which
is it.
Okay.
Is that the first time we've heard orbital bombardment? That was an interesting way of describing an air battle.
This is outside of canon. I there's probably an example in canon, but the one that immediately comes to mind is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, the video game. There's one of the ships
I remember, yeah.
is like lasers the entire city and destroys it.
Yeah.
But that's not canonical. So there probably is a canon example, but I don't remember it.
Orbital bombardment just sounds hilarious. Like,
I mean,
it's definitely more effective, but ground assault just sounds cooler.
Right. Well, and ground assault, you get the AT-ATs, and you get the sort of Hoth feel of the approaching walkers, and I mean they were definitely going for that kind of a look and feel, and actually it was funny. Dave Filoni in one of the interviews behind the scenes was talking about that whole sequence, and he said something to the effect of like everybody's so intense and Callus is like full speed ahead, and then they're walkers, so they're just
they're turtles, man. It was the highest speed chase of AT vehicles. Yes,
right. So Callus decides to do a ground assault, and again, it's comical. Like they do see 3 AT-ATs approaching, and Rex starts to ask, how many legs do they have? 4? How are they not falling over?
They're not falling over.
So the clones on board the ATTE decide to turn and head into the sandstorm, and they have to let go of the Jupa, much to Gregor's dismay. But the Phantom, they do manage to get it fixed, but they can't fly it because they'd be shot down. So the crew of the Ghost is very much settling in for this this chase in the sandstorm, and Rex is the one, he knows the abilities of the Jedi. So that was like part of his whole plan, which was really, really cool to see, because he is just immediately and inherently trusting Kanan and Ezra to help and to use their Force abilities to win this battle. Because he points out that when they're in the storm, everyone's going to be blind, but the Jedi won't be. And so
I started to cry at this point. when he said that line, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He knows.
Yeah. And it works out. It's exactly what they needed in that point. Because the AT-ATs follow them into the sandstorm. And meanwhile, we do shift back to Hera a little bit, and she decides that she can't wait anymore, and so she turns Chopper back on with low power, and they continue to fix the Ghost. And again, just some really good Hera Chopper sarcasm there, because Chopper's complaining about how slow he's going to be, and Hera says, well, it's not going to be much slower than you normally are. Like, those two are really fun. But back down on the planet, they establish, Sabine points out that the one weakness of the AT, unless you have a speeder and a cable and can trip it up, the one weakness is in the armor at the neck, and so one shot from their main gun should take it out. And meanwhile, Callus is ordering his AT-ATs to try to flank them, and that's when we get Kanan's force abilities and sensing really put on display here, because he's able to use his force sensing to direct how to move the ATTE and position them so that they have a shot to take out one of the AT-ATs. And yeah, the clones respond instantaneously to everything that Kanan suggests, like, full stop or turn or, whatever.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say there was an earlier line by Rex, who's, I think Kanan said, like, you'll have to trust me or trust us. And Rex says, I always trust my general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what made me cry.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he puts him in his place, and in a way that's like that Kanan needs at this point. Kanan is still very much not feeling the depth of his power. Season 1 is all kind of like that. Like Ezra's like waking him back up to what he's supposed to be, and now he's there, but he's still not wanting to engage and wanting to really use it. And this is like, Rex is like, no, you have to. I am relying on you at this moment. Everybody's depending on you. Just do it. I know you can. Just do it.
I think Rex knows like how sensitive Jedi are, and he knows how to. I know he's genuine, obviously, but he knows how to like sort of manipulate them in a way at the same time to like get them to work at their strength and at full strength. So yeah, I think it was like I mentioned earlier. I think Rex just has a good handle on how to be a good soldier, but at the same time, he really is like the leader of the bunch, but he's usually humble about it as much as he likes to be a tough guy.
But I think it was also an opportunity for Kanan. Rex kept saying things like that, and Kanan kept having these looks of like, are you serious? Like, because he's so distrusting of the clones that Rex continues to show him that regardless of that, Rex has full confidence in Kanan. And so I think that there was a moment there where Kanan was starting to recognize his own, perception of the clones might not be correct.
It's essentially Rex saying, okay, here's my plan. We're all going to trust you to get us out of this.
Yep. And that's exactly what happens. But it was again sort of just comical that Kanan, they trust him, and Kanan then points out that he got him surrounded, and they make some snide comment about this is crazy, but this is exactly the situation that they need to be in order to take one of them out. At which point Ezra is Ezra and Sabine head up to go to the gun so Ezra can direct it to take out one of the AT-ATs. And we have a very Luke Skywalker Death Star trench run kind of moment with Ezra as he's recognizing that the targeting computer can't help him at all, and he has to trust himself and the Force to make the shot, which he does, and down goes the AT-AT, and the clones and the Ghost crew are immediately then, of course, they're found by the other two, and so they head quickly through the opening that they created and kind of out of the storm. At this point, Admiral Constantine on which, by the way, it's spelled with a K, which was I thought was kind of interesting with all the subtitles on. Admiral Constantine on the Star Destroyer receives this urgent transmission from Darth Vader requesting their immediate rendezvous with his shuttle. So he leaves Kallus on the planet because he's ordered to and goes. And Hera takes that opportunity to continue to fix the ghost and get it working. But back on the planet, then they get out of the storm, and Rex basically tells the Ghost crew to get going, to get into the Phantom and go, and that the clones, are going to watch their back and defend. And essentially, it's setting itself up for the clones to sacrifice themselves for the Ghost crew to leave with that information, which was quite the again the faith that they have in Kanan and Ezra and the Ghost crew, that they're absolutely willing to lay down their lives for them was really good to see. They turn their AT-TE against the coming AT-ATs and just kind of duke it out. Kind of physically, they kind of ram the AT-TE against Kallus's AT-AT. I swear I'm going to get tongue-tied with this.
Alphabet soup.
And the Ghost crew they get aboard the Phantom and start heading out. And we see Ezra again trying to convince Kanan to do the right thing. And, what are they going to tell Ahsoka, since Rex was her friend, and even if he's a clone, this isn't quite right. And that's, in that whole scene, Kanan recognizes that Ezra's right, and that he may have problems with the clones, but he doesn't want those men to die. So they swoop back in and come and save the day. And Rex has a great line that he sees Ezra and Kanan and Sabine drop on, or Zeb, I guess, drop into one of the AT-ATs, and Rex smiles and he just says, just like the old days. So
did that one make you cry, Angela?
Yeah, that one hit me, man. I was watching him, that's like, that's a good moment when he's and the depth of it, like, he hasn't had that since the Clone Wars, when everything went all sorts of sideways and horrible, and he hasn't seen Jedi since that point. So that's intense.
Yeah, and especially after having seen the Clone Wars so recently, that emotional connection is like, yeah, that was cool. So the captured AT-AT fires on the remaining Imperial one, so Kallus's AT-AT, and Kallus wonders where the heck his air support is, and is forced to evacuate and get on his speeders and speed away. So they of course escape and head off into the desert, but the rebels are able to kind of win the little battle there. And again, a few lines of Rex commenting that they're going to live to fight another day, and Gregor makes the comment, "We do when we've got a Jedi leading us." And at that point, the ghost finally arrives. Hera finally shows up to pick him up, and Admiral Constantine, back on the Star Destroyer, is not greeted by Darth Vader and his shuttle, but the new Inquisitor, who is gonna plague the rebels throughout the season. And then we have the very touching, heartfelt reunion between Ahsoka and Rex.
That was intense. And I love that Ashley Eccleston does shifts the voice. The voice goes from being this mature version of Ahsoka right back into the 13-year-old Padawan. And she does such a good job. It gave me chills watching that scene because she really does just drop all the years off. And that's one of the things that my kids have complained about is that she looks so old in this series. And I'm like, well, she's a lot. Yeah. She's like my age in this series. She went from being a teenager to being my age. That's she grew up a lot over this path. So, to see that just kind of melt away and her become the kid that she was during the Clone Wars again on seeing him was just really, really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, again, watching it after just recently finishing Clone Wars, it means a whole lot more, and it was really, like you said, it was really touching. I'll just echo everything you said, but it's seeing Ahsoka, just her being so serious all the time, just kind of like you said, letting that shit away and having that moment with Rex was really special, and I think for anyone listening out there to the show, if you haven't seen Rebels, or if you've only seen Clone Wars, or it's been a while since you've seen Rebels, this is a big reason why you should maybe revisit it again and get to enjoy these moments with this sort of new perspective. I'll let you guys finish off. I have to leave, so I'm going to sign off, and you guys take it home.
Thanks for joining us, Andrew.
All right,
Thanks.
Take care.
Angela, I want to know what your thoughts were on that reunion.
Well, I cried. I didn't write it down, but I remember they exchanged some line about I'm glad you survived, or I'm glad you made it out alive, or something like that.
So what I wrote down, and I'm not sure, there might have been that too, but there was a lot more kind of comedy because Rex comments that she got old, and she says, "Had to happen sometime, Rex."
Yeah, there was some kind of line that I remember about just the two of them being glad to see each other alive. And so that, we've been talking about what was the backstory when they separated. When we watched this episode the first time before seeing the season finale of Clone Wars, we were like, yeah, of course they were separated. But now we're like, wow, what happened? The reunion just, again, it's so much richer after seeing Clone Wars.
Yeah, the hug, I was just waiting for it, and I was so glad that Ahsoka hugged Rex, because that just conveyed everything that I knew that needed to be conveyed. Yeah. So and then there was a comment right at the end of that scene. Ahsoka thanks Kanan for trusting Rex, and Kanan admits it wasn't easy, and that it still isn't. And Ahsoka says, "Nothing worth doing ever is."
This is one of my favorite lines from Ahsoka ever. And I'm pretty sure she says it at least one other time. I want to say it's also in Rebels. But I remember hearing this line for the first time and just being like, wow, I was so struck by it. Because of not only the line, but also because of who Ahsoka is. Mm-hmm. You think about not just the in-universe struggle that she had, but even, Ashley Eckstein's struggle to really get this character in the hearts of the fans. What, all the hate that she got really online. And then she's a big proponent against bullying and helping kids who go through that kind of situation because they love Star Wars, because they're a girl, because whatever, to overcome that. And so I love that Ahsoka is the one to say this line, because it's a theme of Star Wars, I think. It really hadn't been put that way. I don't think. Well, Yoda says that kind of thing too about there's no try, right? So, but it's a different way of seeing it. I think maybe for a different generation and a different audience.
Yeah. But I love, too, how it just points out that, I mean, doing the right thing isn't necessarily the easy thing. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, Ahsoka and her character, and I mean, everybody who does the right thing as opposed to the easy thing, it's so much more fulfilling. There's joy in doing it, even though it's not easy, and that's just, yeah, it's, well, and for Kanan there too, she's referring even to just his own lack of trust, and that he's making those steps to trust. And that's not easy, but ultimately it's worth doing because it's the right thing to do.
I think here too, like the great thing about Ahsoka's character is that she can speak to multiple people with a single line like that, because she's saying it to Kanan, but she's also saying it to Rex, because Rex is still, 1 foot out of the mission. And that's kind of like, there are so many times where she's stuck in this position where she's like the one bringing everybody together and, okay, we got to do this, guys, let's do it. And she has the right thing to say that gets everybody on board and everybody buying in. And you see that again in this moment here where she's talking to Kanan, but she's also kind of saying it to Rex, and she's really saying it to herself too. Like, this is still worthwhile. And you always see that with her, where she empathizes with everyone around her very well, but then is also willing to take that step and make sure that things happen.
And again, it's good storytelling for this to happen in this way, where it's not preachy towards us as the viewers, but it's just a natural lesson that we take away from the episode and watching the characters grow and their struggles. So yeah, very, very well done.
And all of my kids were very affected by that line too. Like, all of them kind of had this collective sigh at the end, and one of them even just nodded and said, "That's a really good point."
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's exactly how it should be.
That's exactly how it should be. Like, as a dad sitting here watching with him. Yes.
Thank you, Star Wars. Thank you, Dave Filoni. Thank you, George Lucas.
But it really is. It's like, I love that they're getting instilled with these messages, and that they're like, that they're taking them in, and it's not just, they're not just glossing over them. They're really absorbing the stuff that's coming in, and it's good stuff. It's like it's life-changing stuff if you let it be.
And it's not just dad telling me.
Right. No. And that's one of the things I really like about it, is that, I could say that 100 times and they're not going to hear it, but when it comes through an animated thing,
Oh, that's great. Cool. Any other final thoughts on these 2 episodes before we wrap up?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
So earlier in the episode, when Callus is facing off against the clones alone, he has this line where he says something like, "Let's show these clones just how obsolete they are." And I really, really saw into that line, not as just because they were clones, but also because they were old. And I, as part of my job, our bishop has tasked us with, where I work, creating a ministry for seniors in our area, because he sees how seniors really feel as if they have no purpose. They're not useful anymore because they're old. And I've seen that. It's shocking and shockingly sad to, like, we have this event for seniors, and to get their evaluation forms saying like, "Wow, I had no idea that I still have a purpose." And so, at the end of this episode, we see Rex kind of saying like, "Well, I don't know if this is really my thing anymore. I think I'm kind of past this, and I've done what I needed to do." Of course, we know that he gets involved, right? Later on, he gets involved with the rebellion. And I really think, it's sort of a nod to this idea that, I mean, we're in a pandemic right now that we're recording, and there are a lot of seniors that are alone in their homes, and we all, may have those family members or neighbors or whatever. And I think it's important to remind those people, especially now, that their wisdom, their experience, just who they are, their care for other people their ability to care for other people is still very much needed today. And, that's their mission. They may not be Rex. They may not be like in a battlefield, but I mean, really, like we are sort of in this emotional, spiritual battlefield still, and they're still in the fight. They're still here and they're still part of it. And, even if somebody doesn't have, conscious abilities, they're still important, and it's not about what you can physically, contribute, sort of like a robot, the clones, they aren't droids, right? They're people. And that's an ongoing theme that we've been talking about. So that just really, that theme towards the end really struck a chord with me. This idea that these old geezers were kind of out fishing and they sort of thought, well, we're no longer part of this. But I think one of the overall themes of Star Wars is that, everything affects us. We're all citizens of the galaxy. We're all, we all affect the overall big picture, right? And so, I just I wanted to mention that theme and the importance of that for us too right now.
That was beautiful. But you, the core of that is that our dignity and our worth is not based on some arbitrary calculation of how much you can quote unquote contribute to society in a materialistic way. That no, everybody, doesn't matter, young, old, or even my brother's autistic, and he can't contribute in the same way to society that most people can, and yet every single one, my brother, the elderly, have absolute infinitesimal value for what they bring to the world and to the life.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remember that we need to surround ourselves with many voices. And one of those things that we need to do is not just listen to people that have experience that we can immediately get value from, but to meet people who have life experience that's outside of what we are currently doing ourselves. Because there's so many times where I love talking with people that have stories. It's my favorite part of sitting with someone and just listening to their stories, because they'll be telling a story and they don't even think anything about what they're saying, but they'll have these just pearls that are just dripping from every single thing they're saying. And they're not even, they're just telling a story. They're not even thinking about the wisdom that they're laying out, but it's just coming out because they've distilled it so often. It's a memory that they have that they've gone back to, and they've thought about how they could have done it differently, or what they really appreciated about how it was done, or how it impacted them, and they made different decisions throughout their life because of that. And they don't realize how many layers of wisdom are just pounded on that thing that was so inconsequential to them. That, this is just a tale that I'm going to tell for the 20th time to someone. But if you as a person listening to them are willing to sit and really hear more than just the story itself, you can get so much out of it.
Yeah. So call up those people that and give them a ring and just listen to, like you said, those stories, those pearls. Because I've been doing that more now. Been talking to my grandmother more and getting more of those stories and learning more, and just appreciating all that.
And just be with one another. Seems like this whole pandemic situation has definitely caused us to be more aware of the value of reaching out, of Skype, of using the Echo Show to drop in on family members and to keep in contact, but more importantly, to just be with one another. That is so incredibly valuable. Very, very good points. So thank you for sharing that. Anything else before we wrap? Okay. Well, that is definitely then it from us this evening. So listeners, what did you think of these 2 episodes of Star Wars Rebels? And definitely let us know. And you can email us at starwars@sqpn.com, or you can comment on our Facebook page or Twitter page. You can find StarQuest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia and on Twitter at SQPN. And as we always do, we would like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Wars, including the Georges family, Carl W., Donald Y., Veronica M., and someone who's new to our patron family, my brother, Gregory. So,
hey,
awesome.
He's a Trekkie. But if you support,
it's okay, we'll forgive him.
If you support SQPN, you are supporting all the shows that we do here, even if you don't listen to them all. So thank you all for being patrons of the SQPN family. You can join them if you would like to give by going to sqpn.com/give and support all the various shows that we make and produce and love here at StarQuest. Also, of course, be sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or you can find us on the SQPN YouTube channel as well, and just be sure to click the bell to get notifications for new episodes. And you can find any of our previous episodes at sqpn.com/Star Wars. And so we will be back in 2 weeks where we will continue to follow Rex, Ahsoka, and Maul in Star Wars Rebels, and we will be looking and reviewing Season 2, Episode 10, Future of the Force, and Season 2, Episode 18, Shroud of Darkness.
Go.
Those are good ones.
So definitely watch those and tune in a couple of weeks when we talk about it. So until then, Thomas Sanjurjo, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
Glad to be here.
And Angela Cialana, thanks for joining us this evening.
My pleasure.
And once again, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.